Welcome, everyone. It is April 16th at 7 p.m. I'd like to call the April 16th meeting of the Strongsville City School District School Board to order. Mr. Anagnostou, would you please take the roll?
Sure. Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mr. Grozan?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
And Mrs. Hauser?
Here.
All present.
Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with truth and justice for all. Next on our agenda is district goals. Our three goals are student achievement, financial prudence, and community engagement. And under the COVID-19 pandemic, we will be challenged to balance them all. Next on our agenda is public comment. I believe we have two public comments at this time. The first one is from Darlene Gerald on Drake Road, and she wanted to share an idea that when the stay-at-home order is lifted, we could balance social distancing with having kids back in school by separating the kids and having half of the kids go to school on one day and half of the kids go back. And it's just an idea for us to consider, so I wanted to thank her for that. And we will keep that in our toolkit. Hopefully we'll be able to bring the kids back to school very soon. And then our next public comment is a question from Joseph on Wood Run Drive. Are students still required to take finals this year, or are they going to be canceled? Dr. Ryba, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. Yes, finals for high school students and middle school students taking high school accredited classes have been officially canceled. So pending the governor's decision whether or not we come back on May 4th or some part this school year or not, there will be no final exams for high school students. As we've shared in prior communications with parents, and we'll send another update on Monday, the grade for high school students will be based on their entire 18-week grade, which if we do not return will be based on how they fared third quarter. So that is a brief overview of how grades will be calculated for the high school students.
Thank you, Cameron. I don't believe there were any other questions from public comment, but I'm going to check quickly, and that's it. But I do thank everyone for sending those questions in. Next on our agenda is recognition. Cameron, I don't think we have any recognition. So hearing none, I think we just want to recognize the fact that all of our students are doing their best at home, and we hope they continue to do their best. Next on our agenda is approval of minutes. I have the March 5th, 2020 and the March 12th, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting minutes. In addition to the minutes, the video and audio recordings are a permanent part of the minutes, and they're available online. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Grozan, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? Hearing none. George, would you take the roll?
Mr. Grozan?
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mr. Micko?
Yes.
And Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next on our agenda is the treasurer's report. Mr. Anagnostou.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Micko. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. Before I have a couple items for your consideration tonight. But before I get into that, I wanted to take a brief moment to update the board and the community based on a recent development in Lorain County, more specifically in Columbia. I don't know if everyone is aware, but there is a small portion in Columbia Township that is part of Strongsville City School District. Within that portion, a former large golf course, Emerald Woods, which has 9 5-hole courses. A section of that property fell into Strongsville City School District. The golf course is in the process of being sold to a developer, Petro Homes, who is in the process of developing those homes, and is planning on building 575 new homes on the property, 90 of which will be on the section of land that falls into Strongsville City School District. The Lorain County Commissioners voted yesterday to provide a 14-day notice to the impacted school districts, which is Columbia Schools, Strongsville City Schools, Polaris, then also I believe the Lorain County JVS, that they will be voting on a 10-year 75% TIF of the increased value of the properties for the purpose of public infrastructure, improvements for sewer lines. This TIF is a little different than the TIFs that we have in the city of Strongsville, as this TIF will be county imposed, and it will not keep the districts whole. How this TIF works is, if approved, is that the Lorain County will be taking 75% of the school district's new taxes, and the district would receive 25% over that 10-year period. As of now, I'm not sure of the total impact of Strongsville City Schools, as it depends on when the 90 homes are built and how they come onto the tax duplicate and within that 10-year period. But as a benchmark, when all 90 homes are completed, the annual gain of tax revenue would be about $450,000. I talked to the developer today. He's working with me to get on a timeline of when those 90 homes will be built and would fall, where we would fall on that 10-year period. Within that 14-day notification period, we can provide a letter to the Lorain County Commissioner stating our opposition to the TIF. Some of the points that I'm focusing on is, although by law Lorain County can do this up to a 10-year period, 75%. One is, why do they need to go to the maximum? They haven't provided us any information on the cost of those sewer lines, and really haven't communicated us at all. Columbia reached out to us earlier this week, and also Mr. Micco brought it to our attention with a recent article in the Lorain County Chronicle. So Lorain County has not communicated at all to us, and we've kind of learned through their proceedings and been in talks with our legal counsel and Polaris as well, and Columbia Schools Board of Education, to kind of get in the loop of what's going on with that property. And then of the 90 homes within our school district, it could potentially mean an influx of 90 to 180 students or more that would come into Strongsville, that may force us to bring additional staffing, transportation, and other associated costs. So it's to not have the funding support, not having the funding associated with the students. I don't believe it's fair to our community to subsidize any portion of that. So with that update, Mr. Micco, I'll turn it over to you if you have any comments or.
Thank you, George. I just want to thank you for staying on top of this and working with our legal counsel to stay on top of this. And speaking on behalf of the board, this is an important issue, and we will continue to follow it because it has the potential to increase the number of students coming to our district, but not increase the appropriate amount of tax revenue for those students. And it's different than some of the TIFs we've experienced before with the city, where the TIF structure allows the development to occur, but we still make sure to keep the school district whole. I don't think anyone begrudges anyone a new home. I don't think anyone begrudges anyone coming to an excellent school district like Strongsville. But obviously, we need to make sure that the revenue is channeled properly. So we'll continue to advocate on our behalf in what's in the best interest of our community. Does any other board members have any questions for George on this topic? You can keep going with your report, George.
Thank you. Moving on to the items on the agenda. Item A, which is the financial report for the month ending March 31st, which is found in Exhibit A. I also have the PowerPoint presentation that I usually do. I'll try and go through it as best I can with the setup. For the community, it is already linked to the treasurer's website under financial reports if anyone wants to see Exhibit A or this presentation as well. If it might be a little hard to see on grid view, but I'm going to attempt to share my screen. All right, it's loading. All right, is it? All right, Cameron's giving me the thumbs up. So for the financial report for the month ending March 31st, 2020, the financial highlights, I'm going to say them as I go through the slides. I'm going to first start on the general fund monthly comparison. For the month, revenues totaled $7.4 million. For the month through March 31st, the district received revenue in the amount of $74.3 million, which is an increase of $8.7 million compared to March 31st, 2019, which revenue totaled $65.9 million. The increase is primarily due to the tax revenue collections with a new 5.9 operating levy that went into effect beginning January 1st, 2020, and then also coupled with tax revenues were down last year due to collection split in fiscal year 18. Additionally, the district is projected to receive $6.1 million in revenue from April to June for a total projected revenue of $80.5 million, which is $2.5 million or 3.16% above the forecast. As you will see on the chart, the increase is primarily due to two factors. One is the real property tax collections. As you'll see, it's about $700,000 more than the forecast, and that's primarily due to the tax collection split on the commercial property coming in at 58.31%, while the forecast was forecasted at 53.50%. And then also an increase in TIF revenues. And additionally, with the TIF revenues, what's lumped in there are the out-of-court tax settlement, or out-of-board revision tax settlements that we received with 3 properties that totaled about $600,000 that was received in this fiscal year as well. And we also had refunds from prior year expenditures from the BWC and Cuyahoga County for auditor fees. And then interest revenue through March 31st totaled $600,000, which is $61,000 more compared to March last year, which totaled $544,000. Moving on to expenditures. General fund expenditures totaled $53.3 million, and we have outstanding encumbrances of $2.3. Of this benchmark, it represents 72.53% of the budget being used. A benchmark to where we are this year should be 75%, so we're slightly under budget. It's slightly under for a few reasons. One is for the March expenditures and going in. Our spending is going to be reduced. I'll touch on it at the end of the presentation, but our spending is going to be reduced from March through the rest of the year as the current school shutdown. Salaries averaged 1.7 million per pay in March, which is similar to February, and the monthly benefit expenditures were 1.4 million, which was similar to February as well. In total, benefits increased 2% compared to last year, and salaries about a 1.7% compared to last year. And then cash balance. Our general fund expenditures totaled $53 million. Our cash balance for the month of March is at 53.6, and with an unencumbered balance of 51.1 million. And then I just wanted to touch on a future outlook due to the COVID-19 and the impact to our budget. First, on the revenue side, where we might see some impacts is on the short term is interest earnings. The interest rate has really significantly dropped during the shutdown. It's now at 0.9%, where A few weeks ago, it was at 1.6, and this time last year, it was about 2.5% as well. Food service revenues, with school most likely being out for the rest of the year, we'll probably see a loss of $600,000 loss in revenue in food, but it'll net because there's no associated food costs other than salaries and benefits. So our projected increase in transfer to the food service fund will be an increase about $237,000 up from the 213. So in total, $450,000 transfer that we'll probably have to do at the end of the year. Property taxes were already collected for this fiscal year, but the impact for next fiscal year may be a couple things. One is increase in delinquencies, a projected increase. Meaning that it'll create a cash flow issue that we may receive less cash in the fall due to increased delinquencies, but we're still trying to figure out what that means and what that percentage will be. I think there was an article in Cleveland.com a couple days ago, but the county still hasn't released anything. And on a state level, it hasn't impacted Cuyahoga County yet, but there are some counties that are extending the second calendar year tax payment from July to September or October. And I think Franklin County was one of them. Still, Cuyahoga County, we haven't heard if they'll be moving that. So that could be a potential cash flow situation. But we do have the cash balance that if it would occur, it might cause us to liquidate some investments to free up that money. Expenses on state funding. State funding was the last revenue item. So right now for this fiscal year, state funding, we haven't heard anything official from the state, but our potential risk there is a potential risk there to impact the state funding based on state revenues, as the state is being funded by income tax, and as their income tax levels are decreasing, that could be a potential risk. Just as a benchmark, our total state funding is about $9 million of our total general fund revenues, or about 12%. And then expenses, we are realizing some savings to sub and overtime costs, contracted services, and outside transportation costs as well. So it's creating a net on, not a total net, but we're saving on expenses and revenues. Some areas might be down, and for long-term impact could be at risk with state funding. So that's all I had, if there were any questions.
Are there any questions for George? I'll just comment for everyone. Common sense dictates that there is going to be a negative financial impact because of the coronavirus pandemic. That's going to affect individuals in our community, and it's certainly going to affect the school district. Financial prudence is one of our goals. It's one of our benchmarks. It's one of the things that we always pay attention to and we're very proud of. So I want to make sure that everyone understands and appreciate George's input on this and guidance on this, because we will need to react to it so that we can minimize the effects as much as possible. Anything else, George?
Yeah, I do have one more item. Item B, amended appropriation measure, which can be found in Exhibit B. And the changes there were some of our federal funds, there was a reallocation by the state. So it's making the adjustments and matching the state figures for the federal funds. And with that, that concludes my report.
Any other questions for George? Dr. Ryba, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Micko. I appreciate it. Under the superintendent's report, just want to give an update of where we've been, what we're focused on, and where we're going in terms of our remote learning plan. I've been sharing a weekly update with all of our staff, as well as our parents via email. I didn't share this with the parents, but one of the quotes I shared with the staff today was a quote by Maya Angelou, and it said, do the best you can until you know better, and then when you know better, do better. And so that's kind of our motto, for lack of a better term, for this remote learning. We're learning as we go. We are not experts in remote learning. We feel we have a solid plan. But our staff knows, our administrators know, our teachers know, but just want to share with the parents as well, is this is not a static plan. As we learn and grow and know better, we're going to do better and we're going to evolve. And so I just wanted to highlight a little bit about what we've reflected on and where we're evolving. And I want to say how important it is, and we appreciate our parents that have reached out to give us feedback on their experiences with remote learning, whether it be at preschool all the way on up to high school, because we want to hear that feedback. We want to hear constructive feedback. And we greatly appreciate people that start with, hey, we appreciate all the work that you're doing and what you're doing to support our kids in unprecedented times. But let me share some things from my perspective as a parent, some of the challenges we may have or some ideas that I have that maybe we can help to enhance that would be positive for all families. And so we've shared that feedback back with the leaders that are doing the work of the remote learning plans, whether it be at the preschool, elementary, middle school, or high school. So we appreciate folks that come to it with a problem-solving mindset, that share their concerns in a constructive way, because it does help us to get better. I also do want to take this time to share how proud I am of all of our employees, to say everybody stepped up and thinking outside of the box and doing what's in the best interest of our community and our kids is an understatement. We challenged our teachers when we communicated with them internally that this is not school as normal. That it's not just going to your lesson plan book and saying, what would I do the week of April 13th, and let's implement that. Let's create work that's meaningful and engaging for our students. And for the vast majority of the work that's being done, they've embraced that. They've taken on that challenge, and they're really stretching themselves in terms of how they can provide meaningful instruction on essential learning components in a way that works in a remote setting. And they're doing that in a time where we're not collecting grades. And so that means they need to create work that's going to motivate and inspire students to learn remotely. And we've had some success with that, but there's some areas that we need to work on, especially with engaging our students at the secondary level. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And so as we look at where we're moving forward and some of the things we need to enhance in our remote learning plan, as I alluded to, the biggest thing we want to focus on in this upcoming week is how do we engage our middle school and high school students to take part into the remote learning experiences that are being provided. I completely understand and I empathize with our families that they are dealing with a lot at home of trying to manage life in a quarantine environment, whether it's, hey, when my spouse is online, it takes up all the bandwidth and we don't have any bandwidth left to take care of remote learning. Whether it be, hey, I've got kids that range from 3 to 16 and trying to manage all of that is extremely difficult. But we're asking all of our parents to continue to be partners with us. We are doing the best we can to create work on our end that's going to get kids to engage. But we need your help, and whether it's providing a structure, providing a schedule, providing expectations, whatever you have as the toolbox as a parent to help motivate our students to engage. It's important work because where they're going in the future, whether it be future coursework or whether it be our students that are getting ready to go to college, the idea that, I feel that it may not count towards something that means I'm not going to engage or do it is not the lifelong skills that we're trying to instill in our students. And I hope as parents, we're trying to keep our kids motivated when it's independent work. So with that, we've made some adjustments on Monday, parents. I will be sharing an email with you, updating some of those, but I just wanted to highlight a few without getting into the weeds. We have clarified for each level from preschool to high school requirements for submission of student work. So we are saying at every level, we will share with you, here's exactly what you have to submit. These are the mandatory requirements. Above and beyond that, it's up to the teacher or it's up to you to submit to share with your child's teacher. So that will be coming. It will say, for high school students, here's what you have to submit. And then in terms of what we've set internally with our teachers is here is the work that is submitted that you have to give feedback on. So again, not to talk in quotes, but there's a well-known educator named Rick Wormley that said, we can learn without grades, but we can't learn without assessment and meaningful feedback on student learning. And that's the message we've shared with our staff, is that although we're not having grades at this time, we still need to provide meaningful feedback to student learning so we know how they're doing and we can gauge and adjust our instruction accordingly, as well as students knowing where they're at, where they need to improve, and how they can enhance and grow so that they can meet the content and be successful moving forward. We are teaching new content. We are requiring new content. So that feedback loop is important. And we'll share with parents, and we've set clear expectations with our teachers as to here's what kids have to submit and here's the feedback that they're going to provide. And we feel we're doing it in a manageable way on all fronts. The third thing that we're going to share is that we are starting up next week that all work that is required to be submitted will be documented in PowerSchool, Unified Classroom Gradebook, the Gradebook feature, the app that you may be used to see how your kids were doing. You will still be able to use that. It's just going to be coded differently. Instead of seeing a grade, you're going to see an assignment listed, and it will say collected, not collected. Those are the only codes in the system we have the availability to use. So if you look on the gradebook and you see that it's not collected, that means that your child never submitted the assignment. If it says collected, that means that we got it and we're looking at it and we're providing feedback. The last thing that's going to be on there, and this is really directed towards our secondary students and some of our high school students that have shared either with their teacher or have just not engaged up to this time, or it doesn't count, I'm not going to get a grade, so I'm not going to engage in it. We are setting clear stipulations as to what you have to engage in, and there will be consequences if students do not engage in the required work. And so we'll share that with our families. It will start on Monday. We're not changing the rules of the game halfway through. We're going to change them and share what the rules are from Monday forward. But there'll be clear expectations for student submittal of work at the high school level. And if high school students want to earn the credit and the grade from third quarter, they will have to meet certain requirements for submittal of work to access that grade, because students are not going to be able to be at home to May 1st or beyond, if that's the governor's decision, and not complete any work, not because we're trying to penalize students. What we've said, and is always going to be true, whatever grade that a student earned up to March 12th will not be lowered by the end of the year. But we do have the ability to say, if you are not going to engage, if you are not going to do the work, then we are not going to give you credit for that class unless you engage with us in work. So it'll be spelled out more clearly, but that's a part where we talk about as we talk about evolving our plan in terms of requirements for submission of work, how we're going to provide meaningful feedback, how we're going to communicate with parents on how our kids are doing in submitting work, and then sharing with our students that there are criteria that you have to meet to earn that credit, and that will be shared with everybody on Monday. And the last thing that I wanted to share, I was in meetings all day today. I wasn't able to hear the governor's press conference. I don't know what was said, but the email has kicked up in terms of, I think there was talk about a plan to reopen certain restrictions for businesses or something to that effect. But that's garnered a lot of chatter about schools and what we're doing with schools. I just want to reiterate to everybody, we will follow whatever the governor directs as a state. We will follow those guidelines. We've been told that if not tomorrow, early next week, the governor is supposed to make an announcement on the future of school districts. And I just want to reassure and reiterate to the board and to our families that we are not planning day by day. We are planning in chunks of time. So we are planning for what we need to do, not through May 1st, but if the governor closes schools, what we need to do to get through the end of this school year to support our families and what that looks like and how that evolves. And then, as Dr. Acton has alluded to, of certain restrictions that, based on her opinion, will be in place for a while. We're starting to have conversations about what school will look like if we're given permission to open up for 2020-21. And because school may look a little differently than it has, as our one person who shared a public comment, suggested some alternatives, but more to come. And with that, whenever the governor makes the decision and communicates that, the Thursday after, we'll have another community conversation to update our families on what that means for us, get questions that you may have with that. So we know we didn't do one this week, but we'll have one in store whenever we see where we're going for the rest of the school year based on the governor's decision, or if something else comes up that we feel it would be good to engage with our community on. So that's the update that I wanted to give in terms of the superintendent's report. Mr. Micko or fellow board members, any questions or thoughts that you'd like to share on that topic? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask Steve Breckner, our operations manager, to come online and join us to share his report for the month. Steve?
Good evening, everyone. There's a few items on the agenda that I have for you. The first one is the purchase of a Ford F-350 truck from the Permanent Improvement Fund. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the purchase of one 2019 Ford F-350 truck from Harrison Ford Wellington at the total quoted price of $39,860.06, funding to be from the Permanent Improvement Fund.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Brozan, second by Mr. Roberts. Any discussion? Steve, can you comment on what we intend to use the truck for, why we're replacing it, etc.?
Okay, so we're using this truck will replace a 2005 F-350. So that truck has been in the fleet now for 15 years. It's getting to the point where the maintenance on it and the service that's needed on it is costing more than it should. The body's rusting. It is by far the oldest truck on the fleet, and what the intention is to put this into the rotation so that our maintenance crew has the best equipment available, the best trucks with all the safety features, the better fuel mileage, everything. This is also a gasoline truck versus the other one is a diesel. So that is the intention, to rotate it through. This is part of an overall plan that we've been working on together as a district it's my third year, and it's a plan to keep rotating through so that when I first came on board, we had some trucks that were 20, 25 years old and being held by bungee cords. A couple of them, the floorboards had routed through. I'm not being dramatic for the camera. It's true. And we've worked very hard to budget because we have a world-class maintenance crew, and they need the best equipment to keep doing the great job that they've been doing. And this is just part of that plan. We've been averaging around $3,000 when we sell these trucks on auction. And I don't see a reason that wouldn't hold true, especially with it being a diesel. If you know anything about engines and things like that, it's never the diesel engine that goes. It's everything but the diesel engine that goes. So it's the frame, it's the box, it's everything else, seatbelt holders. Everything else is starting to go, and it's time for the truck to be retired from our fleet and a new one to take its place within the budget.
So I do want to share that we challenged Steve. Is now the time to be making these purchases? And he was able to defend the decision. It is part of the money is coming from our Permanent Improvement Fund, which is money designed for long-term assets. So I'm comfortable with that. One of my personal rubrics or frameworks is that you want to tie long-term money to long-term projects, and you want to tie short-term money to short-term projects. So although right now we're in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic, we still need to plan for the long-term future of our district So I'm comfortable with this purchase. Anybody else have any questions for Steve? Any other comments? Hearing none. George, would you take the roll?
Sure. Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum? Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
And Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, the second item for the board's consideration is the purchase of a wheel loader, which I'll also refer to as a front loader through this conversation, from the Permanent Improvement Fund. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the purchase of one wheel loader from Southeastern Equipment Company at the total quoted price of $75,344.85, funding to be from the Permanent Improvement Fund.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Grozan, second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? Steve, can you give us the same general comments about the front loader? What do we use it for? What are we going to use it for? How long is it going to last?
Sure. So I can tell you that this is the second part of a purchase of equipment that will phase out a 1990 John Deere backhoe that's given us 30 years of service, and it needs to be retired, quite frankly. The backhoe part of it is not operational any longer, which is why we purchased the mini excavator last year. And then this part will also take care of the bulldozer and the front loader part that is also leaking hydraulic fluid and becoming an issue with performing the tasks that's needed. And those tasks could be anything from moving gravel around to moving dirt around, anything that needs to be transported in a bucket. Of course, the most popular and sought after function of it is to load up the salt trucks so that we can put the salt on the ground and make sure everything is salted properly and safely through the district and all the property. I will tell you that if we were to have purchased a backhoe by itself, brand new, we're looking at generously $170,000 to $175,000, and that would be more towards a relatively new one. We were able to purchase because of the agreements and going out and getting bids and having some very good salesmen working hard to earn our business, and Keith Simic doing that for the maintenance department. We were able to go out last year. The front loader was about $55,000. This one's now $75,000. So we're still coming in about $130,000. So we've been able to save the school district $45,000 because we went with two separate pieces of equipment rather than one full piece. The other issue, as I said, is the John Deere has been in circulation for 30 years now. I don't know how much it cost. I was in middle school when it was purchased. So, and I tried to go back and find some records, but I don't know where those records would be at this point. That's before everything got digitized. So it's lived its usefulness, and quite honestly, the mechanics that we have, a great group of guys, we're going to have to start replacing hydraulics on it if we don't get new equipment. And that gets very costly for a piece of equipment that's already 30 years old. So what we would do, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Steve, could you highlight, I know there's a unique feature with the attachments that we bought before and how those can be purposed for this new piece of equipment, if you want to highlight that.
Correct. Thank you, Dr. Riva. So there's attachments that go on this front loader. You can actually disengage hydraulically the bucket and put like a brush attachment or any kind of auger attachment or a grinding attachment, so we can do our own grinding on asphalt now. We do have a piece of equipment with attachments called a skid steer. All those attachments will fit this piece of equipment, so we don't need to go out and buy any of those attachments anymore, as we would have to if we went with another piece of equipment from another dealership. The other perk of this is that this piece of equipment needs to be built, basically. for the specifications, which is a package that was put together in the quote. We were able to get a deal with the company that if for some reason the October deadline isn't met, with everything going on with the coronavirus and all of that, that we would get a loaner free of charge, so that we don't have to use a faulty piece of equipment any longer. So either way, that's one of the reasons why I liked this option, is not only the attachments, the price was good, and then also the deal that we were able to broker, so that if the snow starts to fall soon, if it ever stops now, then we'll still be covered as the district and not be using a piece of equipment that could cause a safety issue. And the intention, just to finish, the intention is to see what we could get in auction. Usually it sells on auction better, even if somebody just harvests it for parts. Right now, scrap metal is not going for much. So our default always is to go for auction. We can put a minimum on there of what it would be to scrap. And if it's not met, we can always scrap it.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Steve? So I will highlight once again that the funds for this are from our permanent improvement fund, which is tax money that we can only spend on long-term assets like this one. And if everybody woke up the same way I woke up to the snow surprise, making sure we have the tools we need for salt will be very important.
One other, and I'm not trying to press my luck, but one other thing is that is a component, just to remind everyone, and I always try to highlight our maintenance crew. This allows us to do a lot more work in-house too. That saves the district a lot of money. Last year I did a presentation and it's significant. I mean, when we're able to do a sidewalk that costs $30,000 going outside for $10,000 to $12,000 internally, this equipment will pay for itself. And with our great maintenance crew, with our great mechanics, I don't doubt that we will have these pieces of equipment for many, many years to come.
Very good. Any other discussion? George, would you take the roll?
Yep. Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Mr. Micko?
Yes.
And Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, the third item is the purchase of the TransFire Corporation routing system software. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the purchase of the TransFire routing system software at the total quoted price of $26,330 for 1 year, or for year one, and that's the 2021 school year. And the option to purchase a second year, 2021-2022 school year, at the total quoted price of $11,450 for a total price for the 2 years of $37,780. And this funding is to be from the general fund.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Grozan, second by Mr. Roberts. Any discussion? Tell us about what we're buying, Steve.
Okay. So, behind all of the transportation routes that are created, it's not pencil and paper like it used to be, of course. It's now a software program. We've had a software program since I've been here that we've been evaluating. It seems that we're always having to go in and correct. I know my first year I had to meet with some of the developers to tell them we needed these issues solved and solved quickly. To be honest, it just has not been meeting the needs of our district. It's been causing us to spin our wheels some mornings because changes that are made at night, it will not recognize, and it will create what's called loops. So it'll actually take a bus and just keep spinning it around the same cul-de-sac a few times and then spitting it out, and that throws off all of the times to pick kids up. So we're having to go through and correct that. The other issue is, as we are trying to move forward with GPS and moving our systems and our procedures into the 21st century here, quickly finding that the current software and its developers and its handlers and all the way from top to bottom are not being as accommodating as they could be to help us with those initiatives. So about November, I asked our transportation director, December, asked her to come back when she came back to start investigating. And she was able to find us, and you have a few of the quotes from what's termed of the largest players in this game of routing software. We had presentations that were given to us. TransFinder is the one when we listed out the pros and cons. That's the one that we think will integrate best. They not only integrate well with PowerSchool, which is our student information system. So not to get too technical and not to step in Dave's lane at all, but so we have a software that's our student information system. That's everything from address to name to parent, phone contact, all of that. So TransFinder will actually interact with that system, grab all that data, put all those addresses and plot those correctly because of their proprietary software and the way that they do it, which is different from the current software we have right now. It's all GPS based. They'll plot that for us, and then we just plug it in and actually just, I'm sorry, not plug it in, we just review it. If there's an update to the student information system, it will update in the TransFinder system. The other piece of it is this system with TransFinder and our GPS system, Synovia. I will say, and I won't overstate it, but Synovia was very happy to hear that we were considering TransFinder because they work together very, very easily, according to both groups. That wasn't just one that told me, and we had already bought Synovia, so I wasn't dealing with a salesperson. I was dealing with a programming team. So they were very happy. They will sync with the information in TransFinder so we can get real-time information to parents of where those buses are. And I've been assured that we should be able to do that very quickly compared to the pace that we were on with our current routing software. So the other piece of information I do want to share with you is, yes, there is there's an increased cost the first year, and that's procuring the system, the software, making sure all the bells and whistles are working correctly that first year. That second year is more of, think of it like a maintenance fee and licensing fee. That price right there is right at what we're paying right now for a system that's not meeting our needs. And also, that system over the course of time has increased in price. Now, I know, the salesman told me he's assured that we can lock into that price for many years. So to me, this is the way that I believe we should go because our needs are going to be met, and we won't be. The dollar amount I can't put on there is how often we're spinning our wheels and using resources of time and energy of our staff members to keep fixing the problems with our current software.
Anybody have any questions for Steve? Steve, I would ask you to go back to the company, assuming we approve this. Salesmen are great at saying we can have it for the same price for many years. If he means that, he needs to put it in writing.
Okay.
And so I'd like you to do that. And I don't want this to sound harsh. It's fine that Synovia and TransFinder assure us that they'll work well together. I want to make sure you understand, because I know you do, they have to work well together. we need to bring the GPS features that we promised our parents to bear. So I'm comfortable that if the existing system isn't getting the job done, we need to make the switch. But we need to have that done in short order. And I'm happy to hear that both computer geeks are going to talk well with each other. So we'll look forward to that. The last question I have for you is, and I certainly want our kids back in school as quickly as possible, as everybody else does. But if we don't have buses going to and fro, what does that mean for these fees?
I did talk to the salesman. A lot of it is based on just what the software is. However, when we do look at some of the maintenance fees, when I spoke to him, he assured me that if we get to the point where there's some time that we're not in session and we're not using the features to transport students, that he would do everything he can and we will work together to see if we can reduce the overall cost because we're not using it at that time.
Okay. And then the last one question I'd like you to comment on is we asked you to find out what other school districts are using the software.
To highlight some that are in the area, Akron Public Schools, Bay Village, Black River, Brecksville Broadview Heights, Buckeye. I had a version that was highlighted, and I do not have that version up. I apologize. I'm looking for some that are around here. There's over 200 in the state of Ohio that are using it right now. North Olmsted, Orville. I already said Rocky River.
I think the comment is currently the most popular and fastest growing.
Correct. I mean, one of the other ones that are using it that I would say is approximately our size and kind of a, since I've been in Strongsville, kind of our twin to the east, Solon does use this, and their fleet is comparable to ours, as well as their size of the school district itself. So they do have a lot of schools that are using them. And the nice thing is a lot of those schools are also using Synovia and also using Power School. So they do have a track record of being able to integrate those three systems.
Any other questions? George, would you take the roll?
Mr. Grosjean? Mr. Grosjean? I think you said yes.
Yes, I did.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Housen?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
And Mr. Micco?
Yes.
Motion passes.
The fourth item that does not cost money on the agenda is the conclusion of a discussion that we started in March dealing with impractical, deeming a school as impractical. Just as a brief overview here, we're talking about Lake Ridge Academy, and I'll read the resolution and then I can elaborate upon what this means at the conclusion of that. Be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that school bus transportation for the listed students be declared impractical beginning the 2020-2021 school year and all other school years thereafter. The time and distance required to provide transportation, the cost of providing transportation in terms of equipment, maintenance, personnel, administration, and the additional service unavoidably disrupts the current transportation schedules. Be it further resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education provide in lieu of transportation, pays parents of students attending these schools. This reimbursement will be based on the amount allotted by the state. And again, this is for Lake Ridge Academy and the three students that are listed there. These three students are students who would attend Sarar Elementary if they were attending our district. According to state Ohio Revised Code, there's that 30-minute rule. This school was 29 minutes and 22 seconds on official timing. So it's under the 30-minute rule. So the state says we do have to provide transportation, but then it also gives a clause that says the board can review and declare it impractical if the reason that I mentioned in the resolution. The part that I would hinge on now is we'd be transporting 3 students, where we're usually transporting anywhere between 25 to 30 students, if not more, on our buses, depending if it's middle school, high school, elementary school. The cost of transporting 3 students is just not feasible. We're talking about taking a bus out of rotation just to go to Lake Ridge for these 3 students. There are more than 3 students that go to Lake Ridge, but they go to other schools that are outside that half-hour time zone, and we are not obligated to transport them. So these 3 students are the only ones that we would be legally obligated to transport to Lake Ridge Academy from Strongsville City Schools.
So moved.
George, it's on the consent calendar. We don't have to vote on it separate.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions while Steve finishes business services? Hearing none. Cameron, you're up.
All right, thanks, Steve, for all your work on that. Under curriculum, we do have some items for your consideration. The number 1 is potential graduates for Strongsville High School. Be resolved upon my recommendation that the list of potential graduates be approved to participate in the Strongsville High School commencement ceremonies on May 31st, 2020. Final approval is contingent upon successful completion of all requirements for graduation as found in Exhibit F. I do want to make mention, because I know this is a very important topic to a great number of our students and families and as a school district community. As we've shared before, we do have a backup date of Sunday, July 12th with the Wolstein Center. And Mr. Mueller and his team and Sean Collins, the senior class advisor, and everybody have been working. We have backup plans for our backup plans for our backup plans. So we're not ready to share those. We're still working on it, but we're going to do everything in our power to make sure we have some sort of ceremony to commemorate the class of 2020, depending on what restrictions are in place. So they've been working hard through those. We met yesterday to talk through some additional options. So please just be patient. They're working on all sorts of the nuances of how do I get my cap and gown? What about cords? What about announcements? All the things kids have ordered. And so we will be working on that and sharing more. But please know that it is something that we're not just saying, hey, times are tough, it's a different time. We're not going to be able to make it happen. We'll be able to make it happen. It may be a unique situation or opportunity for how we make it happen, but we're going through a variety of scenarios to celebrate the class of 2020. Continuing on the next page, we do have a textbook adoption for a speech course. Be resolved upon my recommendation that textbooks be adopted for speech courses as presented in the exhibit. These books have been recommended by professional staff and reviewed by the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee. These books were purchased with FY20 funds, and it can be found in Exhibit G. So we are, if you have a high school student, we are putting back a speech course. We've talked, I know with the board, maybe not publicly, with our Business Advisory Council of looking at a pathway for students that may not be on a pathway for college or career. So that this course will start with that student cohort, but we are planning, we're still finalizing the details, but in a future year, we will expand it to all students to take a speech course. As you see the research from our business community, as you talk to them, as you look at the data, the number 1 skill that our business partners say our kids are lagging as they go into the workforce is written and verbal communication. And so we feel that even though it's included, there are specific state standards that address presentations and speech and language and communication, that a specific course at the high school is necessary. So this starts to provide the textbooks to present that course. Under number 3, we have a student-teacher agreement. Be resolved upon my recommendation that the student-teacher agreement between Notre Dame College and Strongsville City School District be approved as presented in Exhibit H. This gives us the ability to accept student teachers from the college listed. So this just says, hey, Notre Dame, we've worked with you and you've worked with us, and we've come to agreement about how this partnership is going to work. In future agendas, you'll see then students that may come from Notre Dame and be in the schools. If we don't have this in place, we cannot accept students from those institutions. Moving on, number 4, we have advanced placement program testing service. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that Strongsville City School District pays approximately $100,100 for advanced placement testing costs to be reimbursed by participating students. So we have been communicating with our families of students and our students that are taking advanced placement courses. Advanced placement, the College Board who oversees them has provided an alternative. They are going to take the test online at home. If they take the test, if they get it's scored between a 1 and a 5, if they get a 3 or better, they can earn college credit. So what this means is, as a district, we will pay for the test, and the students will reimburse us the fees for the test. So that's what it means, as it states there, that it's a Rotary testing fund, and the cost is reimbursed by the participating students. And then finally, on number 5, an overnight trip for the Strongsville High School football team camp. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that permission be granted to the Strongsville High School football team to attend an overnight camp July 27th through 29th, 2020 at John Carroll University. Transportation will be via school bus, and costs associated with the trip will be paid by participating students. I will put in an asterisk. All of these are subject to change based on the restrictions that are in place. But as of right now, not to get too far off topic, but OHSAA is still keeping spring sports alive. They have not canceled spring sports. They've followed the governor's order. So depending on what the next governor's order is, will depend on what spring sports will look like. They now have a temporary schedule of May 4th to basically the end of June to get spring sports in. Same with any camps that approving here for football or that we've approved in the past. They're still scheduled to go on until we decide as a district or the state dictates certain social distancing or stay-at-home requirements. And the last thing that will be, I just wanted to update the board and our community that the only field trip that was still slated to go on this summer was our international trip to Germany. They were going to Germany, Austria, a few countries. Christina Potter, who's the overseeing teacher, had a phone conference with me and has worked with our tour group. That trip has been postponed for a year. They finalized the date with the kids. So probably on the next agenda, you'll see a correction to that trip for this June of 2021. I can't remember the specific week they've selected. But Christina has done a great job working with the tour company. She's worked with the students of all the details. We only have one senior that was slated to go. That senior will have options of how he or she would want to handle the trip. But just want to thank her and let the board know that besides this camp, any other school-affiliated field trip has been canceled, and the Germany trip has been rescheduled. And if people partake of it, there'll be no loss of funds. So they'll be able just to reschedule it for 2021 with the same cost that they would have had for June of 2020. And Christine is working with those families that may not want to go on the trip any further. So that concludes the curriculum report, unless there's any questions from the board. All right, under student services, there are no items for this meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent, Jenny Pelko, with the Human Resource Report for the month. Jenny?
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. Good evening, everyone. Under our Human Resources this evening, I have the following items for your consideration. Under E1, we have the retirement of a certificated staff member and retirements of our non-certificated staff members, and hope to highlight and celebrate our retirees at our May board meeting. Under E2, we have the appointment of a certificated staff member, appointments of non-certificated substitutes. Continuing under E2, appointments for certificated supplemental contracts. And Mr. Micko, I do have one change under these. We have listed there Stephen Yeska. The last name there, it should be Joseph. Apologize for getting that name wrong. Under appointments for non-certificated supplemental contracts, there, and we have one change there as well. We have Brandon Wadowitz listed, and that name should be Kimberly Wirtz. WIRTZ. Continuing on, under E3, we have the appointment of a certificated supplemental contract prorated.
I think we're going to have a request from the floor on that, so I'm going to turn that over to Michelle.
Okay.
I'd like to request to delay the vote on item 9E3 until the May 7th meeting.
Okay.
Very good.
So we'll pull that off the agenda and add it to the May 3rd meeting. Michelle, is that what you said?
I think it's May 7th.
May 3rd.
May 7th. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under E4, we have a change in status for a non-certificated staff member. Under E5, stipends for summer school administrator. We are planning ahead with summer school, and information should be coming soon. And again, depending on the governor's order, we'll follow that accordingly. Under E6, we have medical leaves for certificated staff, medical leaves for non-certificated staff. Under E7, unpaid leave for a certificated staff member, unpaid leaves for non-certificated staff members. And under E8, we have a few corrections to some medical leaves and to an unpaid leave. And finally, under E9, we have our volunteers, chaperones, and mentors. And that concludes my report, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Jenny. At this time, I'd like to ask our Director of Instructional Technology to come and join us on the screen, as he has some items for the board's consideration for this meeting. Dave?
Thank you. For tonight, I have a few items. Item F1 is some technology upgrades. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education approves the purchase of Chromebooks, computers, Chromebook tablets, Google Chrome management licenses, associated supplies, and cases not to exceed $150,000. And the other item under F2 is for our Meta Solutions Service Agreement. It is Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. It be resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Schedule 1 of the agreement between Meta Solutions and the Strongsville City Schools be approved to provide information technology services for 2020 and 2021 at the annual cost of $93,515.25. There is a 2% discount for early payment, reducing the cost to $91,644.94. And then be it further resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that Schedule 2 of the agreement between Meta Solutions and Strongsville City Schools be approved to provide Info Ohio Library Services for the 2020-2021 school year at a cost of $16,190.70.
So Dave, if you would, can you give a little context for the board and our community as to what these purchases go to help in terms of supporting district operations?
Can do. With the technology upgrades, this is mostly making sure that we're prepared to start the beginning of the school year for our freshmen. Our high school is 1-to-1 where they actually take home the devices. They're our building that's been 1-to-1 the longest. So this purchase would allow us to make sure the devices are here on campus, available, enrolled, and in our management council, so they can pick them up at their freshman orientation. The reason that we generally do it now, especially with the current situation with some of the manufacturers and suppliers, is we need to purchase enough for all of our students, and then we have a little bit of a loaner overage and a couple extra for students who move in. The worry is now if we don't order them soon, we won't have them available to us to start the school year because there is a current short supply for mass quantity orders of Chromebooks. This also includes the carrier cases that we provide our freshmen and some replacement cases that will go to the middle school as well, to replace some of the ones that have been damaged throughout the year or the ones that are just not in good enough condition that will properly protect the students' Chromebooks throughout the day. Any questions on that first one? All right, hearing none, I will go to the next, which is our Meta Solutions
Quick enough on the unmuting the button. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose the model that you chose?
The model that we chose, if I remember correctly, I don't have it directly on me, is the Lenovo. Then it's basically the next generation of the version we bought this year. This year, we've been really impressed with the model that we chose. We've had previously, we had a version that when we first opened them up and tried to enroll them, we had to send back almost 10% of what we initially got. This year, when we opened them up and enrolled them, we sent one back. So for our incoming freshman class, I don't know the exact number, but of all of those devices that we had, I think we enrolled over 700. On that day, we sent one back because one button was sticking. So that was a great success then. And then throughout the school year, we've had great success with not having students bring the devices in for our high school tech to look at a mass quantity like our previous versions of different models that we had. So because of the success of this one, we decided to stay with the same general model, just get the next year generation of it.
Great.
And then the next part is our Meta Solution Service Agreement. Meta is one of the two ITCs that we deal with on a regular basis, but Meta is our I would say they house the most of the two ITCs that we deal with because they deal with our Power School, our EMIS, our fiscal programs that we use like eFinance, our Invo Ohio Library Services, which is the second part, which provides library services and research programs available to our students at all grade levels. So and they offer a professional development that not just tech, but I know the Treasury Department has also gone to some of those sessions as well. So they are really good with working with us. We've had them for the last couple of years, but when we've dealt with some issues, they've been great with troubleshooting with us, providing us additional services, and then help also identifying some of the issues that we have had in the past, and then helping us reach out to those companies as kind of like our third party or a Power School even, and helping to get those issues fixed in a timely manner. Any questions?
Right. Thank you, Dave. If there are any questions for Dave before he logs off. Thank you, Dave, for being here tonight and providing the report. And with that, Mr. Micko, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Cameron. Next on our agenda is a report on Polaris Career Center. That's me. I would start by giving a shout out to Riley Perez, who is a graduate of Strongsville High School and also a graduate of Polaris Career Center. And she was in the EMT fire training program, and she now is studying to be a paramedic, and she works for a local ambulance company, but she is one of our local heroes during this coronavirus pandemic that is helping with all the health issues that we're experiencing. So I wanted to compliment her and thank her. Just like our home school district, Polaris is doing the same thing as far as remote learning is concerned, and going through that learning process and doing the best we can to give authentic learning experiences. For a lot of the Polaris students, we're doing the best we can to work with the state and the various credential organizations. Because a lot of the programs at Polaris are hands-on, obviously it's difficult times two to have that remote learning, but we're doing the best we can with college credit along with the various certification programs, and we're always trying to do what's best by the students. So that completes my Polaris report on the legislation. Cameron did make some mention of it in his reports, but as the Ohio High School Athletic Association, if we are able to open sometime in May, they will have an abbreviated spring sports schedule with for all the different sports, a short period of acclimation, and then the season will begin as quickly as possible. And the tournaments will be in June and July. So we're crossing our fingers on that. In addition, I was able to get some of the comments from Governor DeWine, and during his press conference today, he did announce that they are planning to begin reopening Ohio on May 1st. And one of the comments he made during his press conference is that everyone should be thinking about how we're going to reopen and what changes are going to occur. And he specifically charged schools and superintendents to start thinking about those plans so that when it is time to return to school, it's not just going to be, hey, it's over. We're going to have to make changes. The coronavirus, until a vaccine is discovered or invented, is still going to have to be dealt with. So it's not just going to be, hey, the pandemic is over, let's go back to school. But it does seem like there's hope that we will be going back to school in some fashion before the end of this school year. And he did announce that next week he will be revealing plans for school districts. So I know we're all paying close attention and we'll act accordingly. And that concludes my report on legislation. We come to section 12. Again, Seth Roberts has agreed to be our OSBA Student Achievement Liaison. So we do need to officially appoint him. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bissell and second by Mrs. Hausum. Any discussion? Seth, you're up for the job?
Yes, I am.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. George, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell,
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mr. Grozan,
Yes.
Mr. Micko,
Yes.
and Mr. Roberts.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Congratulations to Seth, and we thank him for taking on this responsibility, and we look forward to his reports in the future. Next on our agenda is board liaison reports. If we can start with City Council.
Yes, there's only one thing of note from their most recent meeting, and that is that Tony Biandello, the building commissioner, we know is retiring at the end of April, and they have named his replacement. That's Mike Miller, who's currently working in that department. And just a reminder that city council meetings can be viewed live, just like ours, if you access the City of Strongsville's website. And they are doing something similar to us, where they have a hybrid virtual and in-person meeting. So if you're interested in what's going on with city council, please do check them out. Their next meeting is this coming Monday, 8 p.m. That's all. Concludes my report.
Thank you, Michelle. Strongsville Education Foundation, I assume we haven't had a meeting. We will remind everyone about Jockeys and Juleps, which is what date again?
They actually did have a virtual meeting last Thursday.
And awesome.
Yeah, the majority of the discussion was Jockeys and Juleps. Because the Kentucky Derby was moved till September 5th, they have rescheduled for September 5th. So if everybody can mark their calendars, we will be doing the Jockeys and Juleps that night. And that concludes the report.
Anybody PTA?
And I bought a table, so everybody's welcome.
You have to buy a table, George?
Yep, I bought a table.
Laura or George, do you have a PTA report?
PTA Council also had a virtual meeting on April 2nd. They presented their slate of officers for the 2020-2021 school year, and that will be voted on at their May meeting.
Thank you. Seth, are you ready, or do you want to start next week or next meeting?
I'm gonna start in May.
Very good. So that concludes our board liaison reports. For our committee reports, I'm simply going to announce that all our next meetings are to be announced. Does anyone have any specific reports other than that? Okay, that's our committee reports. So next we have our consent calendar. Adoption of the consent calendar at this point means that all items in the agenda with an asterisk are adopted by one single motion unless a board member or the superintendent requests otherwise. Do I have any requests? Hearing none, I will just for the record reiterate that under Human Resources E2, it is Joseph Yuska who is the assistant boys golf coach, and under E2, it is Kimberly Wirtz, who is the assistant girls golf coach. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Grozan, second by Mr. Roberts. Any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Anagnostou.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hauser?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
And Mr. Micko?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Superintendent's timely information. Cameron?
Thank you, Mr. Micko. Just a couple additional updates. Just a reminder, obviously, I usually share upcoming events. There's no upcoming events right now based on our current situation, but I did want to let our community members and groups know that rent and use our facilities. We have canceled everything through May 1st. Once the governor makes his decision as to what schools will look like, we will be communicating with folks that have procured rentals from May 4th and beyond to let them know their status. So just keep an eye out for that. And then I thought there was one more thing I forgot to write down. There's one more thing I was going to share, but it slipped my mind right now in terms of timely information. So maybe I'll jump in later during your board other if I recall. But that's the timely information as of right now.
Very good. Board of Education other. Does anybody have any Board of Education others?
Mr. Micko, I do have a clarification item.
Go right ahead.
So earlier in my report, when I made the update on Lorain County, I had mentioned the development group was Petro Homes. It is actually EWGC Development Group. The person I spoke to was also works for Petro Homes, but this project is under EWGC Development Group. So I just wanted to get that clarify that for the record in the minutes. And that's it.
Great.
I just wanted to say thank you to Dave and his team. I got to see firsthand the passing out of the Chromebooks and the flow of it, the professionalism of it, and keeping the physical distance. Everything was just it was fantastically done. It's a great job to Dave and his team, and I can say firsthand with my two boys, they're very thankful to have them, and it's certainly making it a lot easier to do our best impressions of teachers, and it's so thank you to Dave and to his team.
So thank you, Seth. You jogged my memory as to what I wanted to say. I appreciate it. So what I wanted to share with everybody is that I know we have some students that have things in the building still, whether they're needed for school or needed in general. Earlier this week, we were able to kind of do a drive up for our students that left musical instruments, so we could get those so they could do their remote learning at home. I just wanted to update the board and the community that Mr. Faust and Mr. Breckner have finalized a plan that would follow the social distance requirements, the mass gathering requirements, and get students back into the building to get their essential items. We are going to wait until the governor makes his decisions because we do not want to open up the buildings twice. It will either be come back and get essential items that you need for this X amount of days until we reopen schools, or come back and clean out your lockers and clean out everything for the summer because we're not coming back. We've built a plan that can be utilized in either scenario. So I know a lot of parents have been reaching out wanting to know, I've got a workbook, I've got a calculator, I've got something there that I need to get. We want to hear the governor's decision, and then we will act accordingly and share that plan to allow students to come back, get essential items pending on what our future looks like this school year.
Cameron, when you're working on that plan, I've had a few senior parents reach out to me regarding the kids' senior banners that are still hanging in the gymnasium. Could we maybe try to get those taken down so that the kids can have those too for grad parties this summer?
Absolutely. I'll make a note of that, Ms. Houseman. We'll get those for our students. And Jenny, help me to remember, did we have it or is it happening? I know Denny Ziegler talked about as a conference, we're going to honor our athletes, our 2020 athletes at 8:20. I think is it on April 20th? They're going to turn the lights on at the stadium for 20 minutes to honor our athletes.
I can find it really quick what the date was, but yes, they're going to turn on the stadium lights for 20 minutes to honor our 2020 seniors, and that's happening across the area. So you may see stadium lights in other communities as well. I'm just pulling it up here.
We will share the date unless you.
Yeah, we can. I don't have the date, but they're also going to be recognizing the senior names on the video board as well that evening. So I'm not quite sure what the date is, but it's at 8:20 at night, I believe, and we'll get the date out to you.
Yeah, so we're excited to, obviously not what we would have hoped for our senior athletes, and hopefully our athletes will be able to have some time. But if that's not the case, as the GCC, this is something just to recognize and celebrate our students. And I know Denny and the athletic department are working on ways to recognize our senior athletes that unfortunately may not be able to participate in the spring senior season.
Very good. Any other comments or any other others? Hearing none, I would just like to thank all of our staff, our teachers, our classified staff, our administrators for the job they've been doing. These are unprecedented times, but it's been wonderful that everybody has been taking this not as a chance to not work, but almost work harder and learn new skills to still deliver the best education we can under the circumstances we can. Obviously this is affecting different people in different ways, some worse than others, but I did want to publicly thank everyone for their efforts. And the students who aren't taking advantage or enough advantage of this opportunity, here's your reminder, tomorrow's a new day, a new opportunity to learn something, regardless of what the grades are, regardless of, it's not normal. It doesn't mean we can't learn and do better. So I hope everyone takes advantage of that opportunity.
Mr. Micco, I have an update on the date. It is this Tuesday, 4/21 at 8:20 for 20 minutes. So if anybody wants to drive by the stadium, again, this Tuesday, 4/21 at 8:20 for 20 minutes.
Good, because I was just going to go the stadium every evening until the event. So now I can just mark my calendar. So I appreciate that. Meeting notification. Our next meeting will be May 7th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Location to be announced. However, I am really hoping and I will be praying that it'll be back at our regular location. And then we have another regular Board of Education meeting on Thursday, May 21st. And hopefully with proper precaution, we'll be able to be together again to honor our retirees for all their service to the school district. Executive session, we have no reason for executive session. Next is adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Roberts, second by Mr. Grozan. Any discussion? Well, I will just say thank you to everyone. You know, doing these video board meetings is frustrating and difficult, but it's we did the best we can. So I appreciate everybody's preparation and working through the technology, and hopefully we'll be back together soon. Mr. Anagnostou, will you take the roll?
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
And Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned at
Our meeting will end at 8:32. Thank you, everyone. Please have an abundance of common sense, kindness, and compassion. Have a good evening.
Bye, guys.
Good night.